I still remember every word of the speech I gave at my husband's retirement dinner, 32 years ago. No notes, no index cards, just me standing in front of 200 people and speaking from the heart. But according to my daughter, I can no longer be trusted to manage my own checkbook. Her name is Diane. She is 51 years old, has a law degree she stopped using 15 years ago, and a husband named Carter who has always looked at my house the way a man looks at something he believes should already belong to him. My name is Margaret. I am 74 years old. I taught high school English for 31 years. I have read every word of every contract I have ever signed. I balanced my own books before Diane was born, and I have continued doing so every month since her father passed. I want you to understand that before I tell you what happened at the notary's office that Tuesday morning in March, my husband Robert died 4 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. 11 weeks from diagnosis to the end. There is no kind way to say that, and I have stopped trying to find one. We had 46 years together, a house in Asheville, a savings account we built slowly and carefully, and 2 children, Diane, the older one, and my son Patrick, who lives in Portland and calls me every Sunday without fail. The house is paid off. The savings account holds a comfortable amount, not a fortune, but the result of a lifetime of choosing carefully. Robert and I never took lavish vacations. We drove our cars until they stopped running. We ate dinner at home most nights and considered that a good life. Because it was. When Robert died, I updated my will. Simple, straightforward. The house and savings split equally between Diane and Patrick. I told both of them this at Thanksgiving that same year. I believed in transparency. I thought it would prevent conflict. I was wrong about that. The shift in Diane happened gradually, then all at once, the way most things do when you are not looking for them. It started with suggestions. She began calling more frequently, which I appreciated at first. Then the calls became questions. Was I still driving at night? Had I considered whether the house was too large for one person? Did I know there were very nice independent living communities with wonderful social programs? I told her I drove at night just fine, that the house was exactly the right size because it was my house, and that I had a very adequate social life, thank you. Then Carter got involved. He started mentioning a financial advisor he knew, someone who could help me consolidate and simplify things. He used those 2 words so often I began to hear them in my sleep. Consolidate. Simplify. What he meant, I came to understand, was, let us move your money somewhere we can see it. I smiled and changed the subject. Every single time. Last spring, Diane told me she had spoken to an attorney, not asking me, telling me, about the possibility of establishing a power of attorney so that she could help manage my finances. She framed it as concern. She said she had been losing sleep worrying about me. She said she just wanted to make sure I was protected. I asked her who she thought she was protecting me from. She did not have a good answer for that. My granddaughter, Lily, Patrick's daughter, was 17 and visiting me for spring break when most of this was unfolding. She is the kind of girl who does things without being asked. She noticed my back porch light had burned out and replaced it before I even mentioned it. She sat with me at the kitchen table and asked me to teach her how to make Robert's biscuit recipe, and she actually paid attention, which is more than I can say for most people I have taught things to over the years. On her last morning, she hugged me at the door for a long time and said quietly, "Grandma, you seem tired in a way that isn't about sleep." Children notice more than adults give them credit for. After she left, I sat at the kitchen table for a while. I looked at the biscuit recipe written in Robert's handwriting on an index card I'd kept in the same drawer for 30 years. And I thought about what Lily had said. She was right. I was tired. Not from age, not from the house being too big. I was tired of pretending I did not see what was happening. I was tired of being managed by people who had decided I needed to be managed. I was tired of softening my responses to protect feelings that did not seem to extend to me in return. That was the morning I decided to stop being quiet about it. I called my attorney, a woman named Frances who had handled Robert's estate and whom I trusted completely. I asked her to meet with me, not at her office. I asked if she would come to the house. I did not want to be seen walking into a law office by anyone who might mention it to Diane. Frances came on a Thursday afternoon. We sat at the kitchen table with coffee, and I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, which is one of the things I have always respected about her. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Margaret, has Diane contacted me directly?" I told her not that I knew of. Frances said, "She has. Carter called my office 2 weeks ago asking general questions about power of attorney procedures for an elderly parent showing signs of cognitive decline." I set my coffee cup down very carefully. Frances said she had not returned the call because she represented me, not Diane, and the inquiry had struck her as irregular. She had been uncertain whether to mention it. Now she was glad she had. I asked her what my options were. She told me. I want to pause here for a moment because I know some people will wonder why I did not simply confront Diane. Why I did not sit down with my daughter and say, "I know what you are doing, and I need you to stop." I tried that. Not in those exact words, but close enough. I told her directly, calmly, over the phone, that I did not want a power of attorney, that I was managing my affairs perfectly well, that I would appreciate it if she and Carter would let the subject rest. She cried. She told me I was being paranoid. She told me that she was only trying to help, that she loved me, that it hurt her to feel like I didn't trust her. Carter got on the phone briefly and used his calm, reasonable voice to explain that they were simply exploring options and had never intended to make me feel pressured. When I hung up, nothing had changed. The calls continued, the suggestions continued, and 3 weeks later a new element appeared. I received a letter, or addressed to me, at my home, from a firm I did not recognize, explaining that they had been retained to assist in a family estate management matter and requesting that I schedule a consultation at my earliest convenience. I had not retained this firm. I had not requested this letter. I had not given anyone permission to initiate anything on my behalf. I called Frances that afternoon. What followed was several weeks of quiet, careful, deliberate work. Frances is methodical. She does not move fast, but she does not make mistakes either. She looked into the firm, confirmed that Carter had been in contact with them, and established clearly that they had been misled about the nature of the situation, and specifically that there was no indication of cognitive impairment and no legal basis for the consultation they had been soliciting. I updated my will. I established a trust, and a real one, structured carefully with Lily named as the primary beneficiary for the house. Patrick knew. I called him and explained everything, and he listened and then said, "Mom, I am so sorry. I should have seen this sooner." I told him it wasn't his responsibility to see it. It was mine. I also changed my primary financial account. Not the savings, not yet, but the account where my monthly income was deposited, the account I used for daily expenses. I moved it to a different bank entirely, a bank where Diane had no relationship, where Carter had no contacts, where no one had ever heard either of their names. I did this quietly. I did not announce it. The Tuesday in March began like any other. I had coffee. I read for an hour. I drove myself to the notary's office downtown. Frances had scheduled the appointment to finalize several documents, and I wanted everything signed and official before the end of the week. The notary, a young man named George, who could not have been more than 30, greeted me warmly and offered me water. We went through the documents together, page by page. I read every word. George waited patiently, and I appreciated that he did not rush me or simplify his explanations or speak to me in the careful, slow way that some younger people adopt with older women that I find deeply condescending. When everything was signed and witnessed and notarized, George looked at the stack of papers and then at me and said, almost to himself, "This is thorough." I told him that I had been thorough my entire life and did not intend to stop. He smiled at that. As I was gathering my copies, George said, more quietly, "Mrs. Margaret, I want to mention something. I'm not sure if it's relevant, but last week I had an inquiry. Someone called the office asking general questions about notarizing a document on behalf of an elderly client who might not be present in person. I don't know if it concerns you, but given what you've been signing today, I thought you should know." I asked him if he had taken down a name. He had. The name was Carter. I thanked George. I put my copies in my bag. I walked to my car in the parking lot, and I sat there for a moment in the quiet. I was not angry. I want to be precise about that because people always expect anger in these moments. What I felt was something closer to clarity. The kind of clarity that comes when you have suspected something for a long time and then receive confirmation. And the confirmation is almost a relief because it means you were not imagining things. I drove home. I made lunch. I called Frances and told her what George had said, and she said she would document it. 2 days later, Diane called. Her voice had that particular brightness in it that she uses when she is trying to seem casual about something that is not casual. She asked how I was feeling. She asked about the weather in Asheville. She asked if I'd been sleeping well. Then she said that she and Carter had been doing some research and had found what they believed was a very reasonable approach to estate planning that could benefit everyone, and they would love to come visit the following weekend to discuss it. I told her that would be fine. She arrived on Saturday with Carter and a printed folder, actually printed and tabbed, which told me how long they had been preparing this. We sat in the living room and Carter walked me through it. It involved consolidating, that word again, my accounts into a managed trust structure with a co-trustee who could act on my behalf in the event that I became, as he put it, temporarily incapacitated or otherwise unable to make clear decisions. He slid a signature page across the coffee table toward me. I looked at it. Then I looked at Diane. She was watching me with an expression I had not seen on her face before, something between hope and something harder to name. I picked up the signature page. I looked at it for a long moment. Then I set it back down and said, "I'm not going to sign this." Carter began to explain again. I held up one hand and he stopped. I told them calmly and without raising my voice that I was aware Carter had called a notary office to inquire about signing documents on my behalf without my presence, that I was aware they had contacted an outside firm without my knowledge or consent, that I had spoken with my attorney, and that my estate documents had been updated and finalized earlier that week. Everything in order, everything witnessed, everything legal. I told them the house was in trust. I told them I was not confused, not declining, not in any way incapacitated, and that I had not been any of those things at any point during this process. The room was very quiet. Diane said, "Mom, we were only—" I told her I knew what they were only. Carter stood up. His jaw was set in the way men's jaws get when they have been outmaneuvered and are trying to decide how to respond. He picked up his folder. He said something about needing to discuss this further with their own attorney. I told him that was his right. They left. I closed the door. I stood in my hallway for a moment. Then I went to the kitchen, put the kettle on, and called Patrick. Patrick came to Asheville the following weekend. He brought Lily with him. She had a school break and had apparently told her father she wanted to come see me, which Patrick said she had been asking about since her spring visit. She arrived with a bag of groceries, announced she was making dinner, and proceeded to use my kitchen with a confidence and efficiency that made me feel, for the first time in a long time, that things were going to be all right. Over dinner, Patrick asked me how I was, really. I told him the truth. I was better than I had been in a year, that the weight of anticipating something is often heavier than the thing itself, and that I had spent 12 months waiting for the moment to arrive, and now that it had, I felt lighter. Lily asked if I was sad about Diane. I thought about that honestly before I answered. I told her that grief and anger are not the same thing, and that what I felt was closer to grief, not for what had happened, but for the version of my daughter I had believed in for a long time, and the work it would take, if she was willing, to build something honest in its place. Lily nodded slowly. Then she said, "You're a lot tougher than people think you are, Grandma." I told her that was something women in this family had always been, whether or not people noticed. Diane called 3 weeks later. Not Carter. Diane, alone, from what I could tell. Her voice was different. The brightness was gone, and what was left underneath was something quieter, And I thought, more honest. She did not apologize exactly, not in a complete, full sentence. But she said she had been doing a lot of thinking. She said Carter and she had been having some difficult conversations. She said she didn't want to lose me. I told her that I was still here. I did not tell her everything was fine, because it was not. I did not tell her I understood, because I was still working on that. But I told her I was still her mother and I was still here, and that if she wanted to have a real conversation, not about finances, not about estate plans, just a real conversation between a mother and daughter, I was willing to have that. She said she would like that. We spoke for another 20 minutes about small things, the weather, a book she had started reading, a recipe she'd been trying. When we hung up, I sat with the phone in my hand for a little while. I thought about Robert. I thought about the 46 years we had spent building something careful and sturdy. I thought about the house around me, still standing, still mine. I thought about Lily at the stove with her sleeves rolled up, moving through my kitchen like she already knew it by heart. There are people who will try to make you feel like your age is a liability, like the number of years you have lived somehow subtracts from your ability to think clearly, to act for yourself, to know your own mind. Those people are wrong. And the most important thing I can tell you is this. The moment you feel that pressure, the slow, gentle, persistent pressure to hand over your decisions to someone else who has not yet earned that trust, that is the moment to hold on tighter, not let go. I went to the kitchen and put the kettle on. I opened the drawer where I keep Robert's biscuit recipe, and I started making plans.